Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tom here from Action Figure Captures. In today's video we'll be covering lighting setups and basically what lighting I tend to use myself and what sort of configuration I use. I'll also mention the camera I'm using, which is a Sony A99 with a 28-75 f2.8 lens. As for my lighting kit and my light cube, they can be easily found on Amazon. The two that I have basically are by the companies Neewer, Neewer for the light cube, and the actual light stands and the light fixtures are by a company by the name of Photo Booth. They vary in price, and there are a large number of companies that make these products, and they will vary in price depending on the quality of the products and the brand name. For my lighting, I'm using the Philips Hue White and Color Ambience Kit, which allows you to control the warmth or the coolness of your shots using the app, as well as a number of combinations, up to 16 million different light combinations, to allow you to create different looks for your shots. It's an amazing kit and well worth the money. Today's subject in our shoot will be the Raw10 Battle Snake by McFarlane Toys, which I intend to use in a composition with the G.I. Joe classified Cobra Commander. For our camera settings, we'll be shooting with a 4-second exposure and an aperture of f/29 and an ISO of 100. We want that longer exposure time just to make sure that we have enough light on the subject, and we want the higher aperture to make sure that we have a nice sharp image that will capture all the details that we want. The lower ISO will allow us to keep from actually adding noise into the image, which will make the image grainy. This will be our result by using these settings. When shooting at such long exposure times, you're going to want to make sure you're using a tripod to make sure the camera is as stable as possible. Otherwise, you'll introduce motion blur through camera shake. So be sure to use the tripod when shooting at these exposure levels. In this situation, I'm shooting with the light set to a neutral tone, so I'm getting a somewhat cooler effect. If you go too cool, the images will appear bluish. If you go too warm, they appear yellowish. So just be careful of your lighting settings. When shooting, I tend to prefer to use a black background, just because I like to actually be able to see the edges of the objects that I'm shooting and to be able to pull them out of the backgrounds more easily when wanting to put them into Photoshop and use a different background for the object. A lot of photographers will actually use white, as it's easier to see the edges of the object depending on how dark the object is. In this case here, the object is actually light enough that I can see all the edges and be able to pull it out easily from the background. Depending on the subject, you may need to switch to a white background to allow you to see the edges more clearly. Like you can see here in this situation, while using the Cobra Commander figure, where his boots and his gloves are black and are a little harder to see against the background. I will end up using the black background myself personally because I do prefer it, and I will just simply allow more light into the shot to be able to see the edges of the boots and the gloves more easily so that I can take it out from the background. You may prefer to use a white background in this case. So in this case, I'll be shooting with the same aperture, but I'll be shooting at an 8-second delay to allow the additional light to get into the shot to allow us to see the edges of the object. As you can see, at this exposure, it allows just enough light inside to get the edge of the subject without overexposing the rest of the image. Which will allow us to pull this figure out of this background and drop him into a new background along with the Raw10 McFarlane Toys Battle Snake. In addition to shooting the object separately, I will also be taking shots with it together, just to make sure we actually have a nice clean shot. And if this one is actually preferable, I'll be using it in place of the individual images. And here's where the fun begins. Putting your figures in all those crazy action poses that you'd love to capture. Slight changes to angles, as well as shooting on different angles, can add a whole new look to your images, and you can get some really creative shots. As you can see here, even a slight angle change gives you an all-new look to those images. And this will look great once it's pulled out of this black background and thrown into its new home. Cropping the image also helps, and will give you a new look to the image as you actually drop it into its new background. If you're using Photoshop or any other editing softwares after your shots are taken, don't worry about all that additional information in the background, as you'll be cropping that out or photoshopping through masking to remove all that additional information. If not, however, you may want to consider zooming in to avoid all that additional information in your background as best as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, if you happen to have a set of color adaptive lights, you can get some pretty amazing color combinations by just adjusting the light settings on each bulb to give you a different result. You get some pretty interesting color combinations that way. After we've taken all our shots, the next step will be to drop all the images into Photoshop and to remove our backgrounds, and then to add some effects just to give those images some extra pop and bring life to your images. That process will be quite lengthy, so we'll do that in a separate video at a later time. That about wraps it up for this video, guys. I'm going to continue to take these shots, and I will be dropping them into the computer to do the editing, and I will actually throw them in throughout the video just to give you an example of the results. And also they'll be on my Instagram page at Action Figure Captures, and you can check them out there as well. Thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I hope you enjoy the videos. More to come.